What's up, family? Today we got America's corniest tether, Myron Gaines, with his typical positive message for the black community.
You can't sit here and complain about civil rights or not being treated equal in 2026. I'm sorry, bro. You cannot use Jim Crow, the civil rights era, which your great-great-granddaddy did, in 2026. You do not have the same level of oppression in 2026. I would argue.
This is why we call Myron a tether, but this is also a teaching moment. So before 1964, people could legally ban black people from stores and hotels and hospitals and schools and churches, lawyers, dentists, medical clinics. That's not great-great-granddaddy history. That stuff shaped living people's parents and grandparents today. You see, integration was never permanent. Integration only works if the government enforces anti-racism laws and white society obeys them. So he sounds completely goofy saying black people can't mention Jim Crow in 2026. Meanwhile, in the courts, they are actively dismantling the legal infrastructure built to stop Jim Crow from ever coming back. So he's not talking about that part because he doesn't know about that part. And that's the name of the game. He doesn't have to know. He's grifting. These are money plays for these guys. And that's why they can't be trusted. And this is why we don't respect them. And this is why they have the reputation that they have. You see, we're entering a reality where the government and the courts are no longer willing to enforce anti-racism laws, which means the issue is not the past, it's the present. You see, if he was an FBA or a black American, he would understand that black representation disappeared after Reconstruction because of voter suppression and violence and gerrymandering. And it can happen again, like they're trying to make it happen now. So he doesn't get to say, oh, y'all got to stop bringing up Jim Crow. Meanwhile, the courts are reviving the legal conditions that made Jim Crow work in the first place. You get where I'm coming from, family? But wait, he says more stupid shit.
That black people now have more opportunities than ever before, and in some ways have even more opportunities than white people. Someone who is black versus someone who is white, if they both apply to an Ivy League school, that black person is 10 times more likely to get into the school than the white person who has similar traits, grades, extracurriculars, etc. We have overcorrected. That is the truth. I know people don't like hearing that, but that's the truth, bro. Racism is no longer a valid excuse that black people can use to be mediocre. And they don't like when I say that.
See, family, this is another little sleight of hand trick these folks try to pull, where they take something that's factually true about black folks, like discrimination and exclusion or disparities, and then they flip it on its head to say, well, hey, this is really happening to white people now. You see, Myron never explains how black folks supposedly have more opportunity than white folks. He never gives you a timeline. He never explains when black people became the dominant group in America. He never explains how a group that still overwhelmingly trails whites in wealth, home ownership, inheritance, healthcare outcomes, business lending, sentencing, and generational assets somehow became more privileged. He doesn't tell you that. He doesn't break that down for you. Instead, he tells you it happened and you niggas should just stop complaining about it, period. And that's how you know these dudes just talk on autopilot. They know their audience doesn't need proof. They just need anti-black rhetoric. That's all they need. It's like red rancid meat for them. They really eat that shit up every single day, Twitter, the whole nine. And what's crazy is Myron brings up Ivy League admissions while completely ignoring legacy admissions, a system historically built to protect wealthy white enrollment in elite schools. So while he's crying about black people allegedly getting quote unquote special treatment, white families have literally had inherited admissions pipelines for generations through alumni legacy, donor connections. They got prep school pipelines. They got inherited wealth, obviously. They got family networking, private tutoring, property tax funded school systems. That's not merit. That is a well-oiled machine. That's a system. And even with all that, white students still represent the largest share of financial aid recipients overall in America, which is crazy. So this fantasy that black students are flooding Ivy League schools and replacing white folks, that's obviously cap. That's racial propaganda. Now, I could sit here and say Ivy League schools created diversity and Affirmative action policies, because America spent centuries legally excluding black folks from education while simultaneously giving white families generational wealth, legacy admissions, donor networks, and institutional advantages that still exist to this day. I could say that, but anybody can go online and just find that shit out. I could also say black students only started getting broader access to elite institutions because civil rights laws forced white institutions to stop openly discriminating against black Americans specifically. I could say that. But then again, American history and a quick Google search can prove that too. So you don't need me to tell you that. Honestly, I do not care about debating every statistic with dudes like Myron. They're just clearly lying on purpose. They're intentionally trying to make shit up. I'd rather talk about why people like Myron make videos like this in the first place. The real goal of this rhetoric in making these videos is to make racist white audiences feel morally justified in their resentment towards black Americans. That's the real name of the game. If you build a following telling white folks black people are privileged now and black people have more opportunities now and black people are the reason why you didn't get that job or that slot in that college, black people use racism as an excuse, black people are actually discriminating against you now. If you build an audience off that type of shit, then suddenly white resentment becomes self-defense instead of prejudice or racism or white supremacy. That's the sleight of hand trick. Because if racism no longer explains disparities, if discrimination no longer explains disparities, if history no longer explains disparities, if institutions no longer explain disparities, then what exactly is he saying explains them? How exactly do we explain them then? Once you remove racism from the equation entirely, the implication always becomes, well, black people did this to themselves, or they're in that position because they're just inferior, which is what they're making, the genetic argument. It's all about making the inferior argument that their ancestors made, their great grandparents made, their parents made. It's all about making the argument and maintaining that black people are inferior. We didn't do anything, and we're not currently doing anything. And anything that happened in the past, well, it's not true. And if it is true, well, then it wasn't me and I didn't have anything to do with it. That's the argument they're trying to maintain. They just use racism and anti-black rhetoric as the vehicle to get to the end, which is just you niggas are inferior. That's the entire argument that they're making. All this other bullshit wording and niggas getting into college and pull your pants up, niggas, all that bullshit is just the vehicle that they use to get to the end, which is you niggas are inferior.